Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. The Road to Autonomy is brought to you in part by Stantec Generation AV. Stantec Generation AV combines some of the most experienced AV experts in the industry with the resources of a global engineering firm. Stantec Generation AV provides education, consulting, assessment, and guidance to any industry interested in autonomous vehicles. Learn more at stantec.com. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to have Greg Rogers, Public Policy Manager Nuro. Welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thanks, Grayson. It's great to be here. Long time, first time.
I like that. See, now, I like that. That's WFAN 660 AM Sports Radio, New York. My wife heard that. She's like, I don't need to hear that again when they call in Joe Beningo on the overnight. So we got the WFAN call sign in there. We're good to go. You have your own podcast, the Mobility Podcast, and you had me on there a few years ago when we were at AVUSI, and we had this awesome conversation about Walt Disney World, Star Wars, and experiences. So we got a lot of hype to live up to.
Yeah, we sure do. We talked about Chewbacca in the passenger seat and me cosplaying as Han Solo. I mean, that episode really had it all.
It did. We're going to dive into a little of that today, but now
Yeah, let's just more swashbuckling. It'll be great.
Hey, we'll get Johnny Depp Pirates of the Caribbean. We'll make it a Disney branded thing, and then we'll have a special call in from Bob Chapek, and then now it's Disney IP. I don't know if I can distribute it then. We're gonna talk about Nuro today. Nuro is a fascinatingly cool company doing really awesome things, and Nuro's in the process of scaling and commercializing the technology. The company recently announced plans to open a manufacturing facility in Las Vegas. Super cool. You're manufacturing here in the United States. What are the plans for that facility? And also, I want to point out you're building a test track there as well.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Grayson. For your listeners, Nuro, we're a robotics company. We're based out of Mountain View, founded about 5 years ago. And so our mission is to better everyday life through robotics. And so we're starting with autonomous vehicles for local delivery. Our partners, which we're going to get into, include Kroger, Domino's, and FedEx, and others. Right now, we have operations today in Houston, Texas, Greater Phoenix area, and the Bay Area. And our ultimate goal is to provide autonomous deliveries to consumers for free, or as close to free as possible. And so that means helping to connect people with the things that they need, whether it's groceries, food, deliveries, or goods in their communities, regardless of whether they have a car or not, or have access to public transport. We really want to allow people to access the things that they need. And so how do we make this dream possible? How do we scale? The one big step, which was really two, this August was announcing 2 new facilities that we're going to build in Nevada to really bring this vision to life. The first is an end-of-line manufacturing facility. This is where we're going to, and this is actually, so first of all, this is the first such factory in America that will have the capacity to manufacture tens of thousands of autonomous delivery vehicles, which we're really excited about. That's going to total around 125,000 square feet of space, 80 acres of property development. It's where we're going to push forward our next generation vehicle. Then we're going to have a facility for closed course testing. We took over 74 acres of the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. In this location, we're going to be building a world-class closed course testing facility. And so this is where we're going to do the sophisticated, validation and development of our autonomous delivery vehicles. And this track is going to measure the vehicle's performance in a ton of different scenarios, whether it's navigating streets with pedestrians and pets, giving bicyclists space on shared roadways. And we're also going to be doing some environmental tests and vehicle systems validation. So really exciting opportunities here, and we're just thrilled to be in Nevada.
I got to stay on the Disney theme. You said racetrack. First thing comes into my head is Lightning McQueen from Cars. So you're going to get out on the racetrack and have the Neurobot race against Lightning McQueen?
Yeah, we should do that. We should have Mater there too. I think he'll lag behind a little bit. Yeah. Can we also have Owen Wilson saying ka-chow? That'd be great. Maybe we should have Owen Wilson being the voice of the next generation vehicle, huh?
I think that'd be cool. Mater can be R2's friend, and they can go on adventures together when Lightning meets a girlfriend, and next thing you know, we got a Disney movie.
I can already see the animated short.
We got Cars 3, so anybody from Disney you're listening, call Greg. We can perhaps get a Neurobot in the next Cars movie. And the next thing, we're going to take this even further with Disney. You can build an attraction at Disney World or Disneyland.
Wouldn't that be great, huh?
It would be great. And Nuro's not just building a factory, not just building a test track. Nuro's creating jobs. I want to stress again, Nuro is creating jobs. You're having a tremendous economic impact in the Las Vegas region with $2.2 billion in economic benefits for the state of Nevada in the first 10 years. That's a lot of positive economic impact. Will you please kindly talk about that economic impact?
Yeah, we're really thrilled to be bringing this investment to Southern Nevada, and we were thrilled to be joined by Governor Sisolak and Senator Jackie Rosen at the announcement event in August. And, these are big numbers in terms of investment, but as you mentioned, it's a job creation. That's the really exciting part. It's the story behind those big numbers, and it's the jobs that are going to be created. It's that ecosystem of innovation that we're going to be part of. That's where it gets really exciting. And so these are going to be skilled jobs building the future of transportation, whether that's in the end-of-line manufacturing facility or the closed course test track. One of the things that was really exciting about the announcement event is in attendance was this local high school robotics team. They were called the High Rollers Robotics Team from Cimarron Memorial High School. They were acknowledged a few times by everyone who spoke at the event, from our CEO to the governor to Senator Rosen, because when you think about this opportunity from this investment, this isn't just jobs and new technology that are being created today. This is inspiring that next generation of kids who are going to go into robotics and coding and other fields, and helping them to see, what the future looks like. And so these students got to meet R2, our current generation vehicle. We're also planning to partner workforce and educational orgs in the area to build a local talent pipeline to ensure that we're building jobs in the community. We're helping to upskill workers and helping to bring more folks in to build these vehicles and test and validate them. So there's going to be more to come on that. So stay tuned there.
When will R2 meet R2D2?
Well, the funny thing is that it's named R2 because it's Robot Generation 2. It's the creative name that engineers came up with. As someone who's growing up watching Star Wars, I was always in love with R2D2, best robot out there. But there's something else I want to mention on the jobs note, Grayson, because, while we're talking about jobs, is that we actually worked with STEER, a group of transportation economists, last year on a report on how delivery AVs will impact the U.S. economy. They studied the impact that delivery AVs will have from 2025 to 2035. And they found that the delivery AV sector alone is going to create and sustain an estimated 3 million new jobs over those 10 years. And that's not just Silicon Valley jobs, as we're seeing already. These are a lot of different kinds of jobs. These are in maintenance, these are in warehousing, this is in local retail. And so when we look at what the potential is for delivery AVs, this isn't just, where we're building our facilities. This is across the country. This is going to be folks who are working in the local stores where we're going to be delivering goods from, picking up and delivering goods from. This is going to be in local warehousing. This is going to be maintenance. So it's really exciting to think about how these jobs are going to spread into a lot of other different fields, and how this is overall going to be just, I think, such a tremendous opportunity.
Thank you for highlighting the report and highlighting 3 million new jobs. And I want to take that one step further. The jobs aren't necessarily going to be created, as you said, in Silicon Valley. They're going to be spread out across the United States. And it's a really great opportunity for an individual to get into work with a high-tech company, get great benefits, and become part of the community and have a positive impact by doing something really good for society. And I want to commend you guys with the High Rollers Robotics team. That's awesome. We could be sitting here, 10, 15 years from now, and one of those kids that came to there could be starting and running a tech company because the leadership at Nuro gave them the opportunity to come out and experience the future. We just never know when those children get to experience technology, what's going to inspire them to go on to build. So thank you for that engagement. Engagement is one of the most important things that we can do, and I hope that Nuro continues to build that positive community engagement as the company scales up and starts to break ground on your manufacturing facility in the Las Vegas region, because there's a lot of really great talent and really great individuals who are doing really wonderful things in Nevada, and sometimes they just need a break, and they just need an opportunity to learn something new, and Nuro's taking that leadership mantle. When you look at learning new things, and sometimes you don't want to learn, sometimes you do, you look at politics and policy. It's a very complicated world. The R2 is beautiful, and I got to tell you a funny story. About 5 years ago, when Nuro was still in stealth. I was negotiating with Dave Ferguson and the team to have it come to Beverly Hills, and we were trying to get it to come down. And I said, do you need drop-off and pickup zones? Not exactly. And I said, excuse me? Not exactly. And kept talking about how they needed alleys. Well, we need access to the alleyways. And we're sitting there in the mayor's office trying to figure, what the heck do you want to... You've got this great talent team and you want access to alleys? Oh, okay. And we identified an alley. But that was really interesting stuff, going through the policy stuff of a startup that nobody knew what it was, then asking for alley access. And now we know that what you're doing, because then they just said, we're doing something different and we like access to the alleys. And we had to go through all of the policy stuff on this. So you have this beautiful R2. You've hinted at it, and I've seen blog posts that there's an R3 coming with a design. What role will policy play in scaling this business? Do you have to go out and meet with, you mentioned the senator from Nevada, the governor of Nevada. Do you have to go meet with the elected officials to brief them on the R2, what it's going to do, the positive impact on the community? Do you have to go through all that, or how do you build all that trust?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is that, as with any emerging technology, education, helping folks to understand, what we're introducing is the first part. For our listeners, if you can close your eyes, unless you're driving, to picture what R2 is. R2 is a zero occupant vehicle. So there's no one inside of it. There's no room for anyone inside of it. It's meant exclusively to carry goods. And so it's about half the width of a traditional car. It's maybe 5.5, 5'8". There are two compartments on the sides. They open up on the right side, so curbside. These are gull-wing doors, and it operates on public roads. It looks unlike any other vehicle on the roadways today. What you come across when you're developing a new type of vehicle is that federal regulations around vehicles were written when autonomous vehicles were considered science fiction, and when zero-occupant vehicles in the first place were considered to be really something that belonged more in Star Wars than existed in reality. Those standards were written when human drivers and passengers were prime. And so they're focused on the safety and comfort of vehicle occupants. Looking at updating those standards is essential, and reaching out to members of Congress, senators, and the U.S. Department of Transportation has been an important thing we've done as well. First of all, to introduce them to technology, but second of all, to build trust in the technology as well. And so this is important right now because NHTSA is in the process of updating the first batch of federal motor vehicle safety standards that deal with occupant protection. These are standards that were written that are focused on things like seat belts, airbags, driver's seats. These are standards that every vehicle on the road is required to comply with. But they make zero sense if you're just transporting a pizza. A pizza does not need to have a seat belt. A pizza is not going to be looking in the rearview mirror. So NHTSA is in the process of, and actually this month they're supposed to update, or they've said they will update. They said in their latest regulatory agenda that they will issue an update that clarifies whether or not you need these sorts of components. This requires a lot of communication and building trust with those regulators.
The pizza, you have to get it there hot, crispy. That's what the individual that's ordering the pizza cares about. Communication and trust is key. What were some of those early conversations when you spoke about the R2 and said, we're a zero occupant vehicle. We want to deliver goods in a zero emissions way. What were some of those early conversations like, since it was completely different than what anybody else was working on?
A lot of these happened before I joined Nuro, but I'll tell you generally, the fact of the matter is that when we started to develop R2, our focus was on building a safer vehicle to conduct deliveries. And since there won't be anyone inside of the vehicle, we're able to take all that safety innovation that we've seen in the past several decades and turn that inside out. And so what we did with R2 was we actually designed it to have a collapsing front end to reduce harm in the event of a collision. And it's also, since it's half the width of a car, we're able to give more room to cyclists and to pedestrians and others on the road. Overall, we've designed this with the safety of others in mind, protecting what's outside, who's outside, rather than what's inside. Domino's can always make you another pizza. They'll be happy to. In working with NHTSA to receive our first exemption, we can get into exemptions a little bit. One of the things that we discussed is, do these components from which we're requesting exemption, do they make sense in an autonomous vehicle? Do side view mirrors make a lot of sense in an autonomous vehicle? Not exactly. Does a backup camera make sense in an autonomous vehicle? No, not if you're going to have a multitude of other sensors, cameras, radar, etc. And so that's why we worked with NHTSA to get authorization to put R2 on public roads.
Basically, what you described is, I'll put it this way, the R2 is road friendly.
That's exactly right.
Not to mention, looks sexy driving down the road. I mean, this thing is cool. It's road safety. I'm a bicyclist. Yes, I wear a helmet. And I'd ride next to an R2. I think it's cool. Dealing with NHTSA and regulations and the federal government, and you've danced around this a little bit, but if the federal government does not take a leadership mantle, the United States will no longer be the home of innovation, and we have to enable these new technologies. That's going to help with the climate change. It's going to help make our roads safer. It's going to improve society. So to the individuals that work in the federal government and at a regulatory level, please embrace autonomy. Please embrace innovation. It's good for the entire United States economy, and nobody will be left behind. Nuro's doing some cool stuff. Matthew Lipka, who works with you, teamed up with my buddy, Bert Kaufman, for the SAVE Coalition. Really cool idea. Bert's been on a previous podcast. That was a fun one, so recommend that as well. What role will the SAVE Coalition play in your policy strategy? Because you've got three incredibly sharp minds coming together with common goals. I'm like, okay, these are the three incredible people in policy. They're going to do something special.
Oh man, well, people can't see me blushing on audio, but this year, Grayson, we formed the SAVE Coalition, which is the Coalition for Safe Autonomous Vehicles and Electrification. We formed the SAVE Coalition because we all share three priorities as we're thinking about the future of transportation. We formed this with Zoox and Local Motors, which I think I might have mentioned, but our three priorities are this. It's building safe automated driving systems. That's the software side. Deploying AVs on zero-emission platforms, electric. And the third was rethinking the design of vehicles and reimagining how vehicles are used, how they're designed, and for whom they're designed. The first automobile revolution left a lot of people behind. It did unlock unprecedented prosperity and freedom of movement, but folks who were not able to drive, folks who could not afford cars, people with disabilities, a lot of people were left behind. The reason we came together is because there's been so much focus on the software of autonomous vehicles. You might have heard of the statistic that 94% of collisions are caused by human error or choice. But we noticed there wasn't as much discussion around the incredible opportunity that you get with design, with new designs that are enabled by autonomy. I think if we zoom out for a second, let's talk about why all three of these things are essential for improving transportation. So when you think about transformational products and they compare them to what preceded them, you have two common themes that pop up. The first is that there's a convergence of technologies. Revolutionary products are enabled by one or more technological breakthroughs, and those unlock new capabilities and efficiencies that just weren't possible before. So if you look at cell phones, for example, it wasn't just cellular communication technology that advanced. It wasn't just building new cell towers that drove widespread adoption. It was batteries that could last throughout the day, that could be portable. It was efficient mass market production that drove down the price of each call. And that's why we take up new inventions, right? To improve on what was there before, to make things more affordable. And it's not just by one step, but many. The cell phone was fast, it was portable, it was convenient, and became much more affordable to everyone. And so with AVs, this first part, that technological revolution, is driven by autonomy, and it's driven by electrification. The second part is what I'm especially excited about, and that's design. Often new technologies that are transformational, they don't look like anything that came before it, right? You don't see cell phones with rotary dials these days. Revolutions in technology are complemented by evolutions in design, which is what we wrote in our announcement op-ed in TechCrunch. And so when you think about how large computers were in the first few decades, right, they could fill rooms, they could fill warehouses. But then there are revolutions in microprocessing, that first part, those revolutionary converging technologies that led to smaller and smaller computers. And you saw computers go from being this homogeneous sort of thing, giant sort of databases, into these smaller designs. You see this heterogeneous sort of emergence of computers. Now computers are our phones, our laptops, our cars, our point of sale systems in retail and in restaurants. And today we're carrying that direct descendant of those computers in our pockets every day. And so I think we need to think through AVs in this lens. And that's what we're trying to help advance is we've been using cars in basically the same way for a long time. Cars, trucks, buses, basically is all sort of used the same. We drive ourselves or we drive goods with us somewhere else. On that end, the AV and EV revolution needs to be met by an innovation vehicle design. That's what we're excited to be doing with Zoox and Local Motors is bringing that message forward, helping people to reimagine what transportation is going to look like. And we're engaging with policymakers at the federal, state, and local level And we're also engaging stakeholders, helping to, I think, build bridges between the AV industry and between those who care about good cities, helping to build sort of a joint vision for what good autonomous urbanism looks like is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think that we have a great opportunity to do.
Design is going to play a key role. I love your cell phone analogy, and I'm going to go on the Wayback Machine. It was funny. My daughter and I were watching Peabody and Mr. Sherman the other night, and they have the Wayback Machine where they go back in history. So we're going to go on the Greg and Grayson Wayback Machine here.
Do we have like a sound effect for that?
Oh, there you go. We got Industrial Light and Magic on the other line here. So we're going to go back to remember the old brick bags, and we had in my family's car, the cell phone was in a bag and it had to plug in. It was a brick, so you had these massive bricks and you had to move it there. Then you went from that. I'll never forget it when Motorola built this phone that ran on the Bell Atlantic network. It was really, really thick, and then Nokia came out with the Nokia Navigator, which is really kind of, if you want to use the term very loosely, one of the world's first smartphones because it had the keypad, and it was featured in The Terminator, which is a great movie. All be Bach. Then it all changed when Motorola introduced the StarTrack. That phone was the game-changing moment for the cell phone industry. This is pre-iPhone, pre-BlackBerry, when they took this big clunky phone and made it this little thing that you could put in your pocket and remove the battery so you could keep going all day. You have the opportunity with the SAVE Coalition, with your partners Nuro and Local Motors, to do the same thing. Perhaps we're at our StarTAC moment again in history where all of your competitors, the rest of the industry says, wait a second. Nuro, Zoox, and Local Motors, they figured out their StarTAC moment. We're going into the future. This is where we're going. It's going to be game-changing when you look back in history. So I commend you in that because design is beautiful. The Zoox vehicle is beautifully designed. Local Motors have been designing great shuttles forever. And then along comes the R2, which you completely rethought delivery and you made it road-friendly. Nuro's operating the R2 out in Houston, and I was telling my father-in-law last night, I said, oh, Greg Rogers from Nuro's coming on. What's Nuro? So I open up YouTube on the TV and I show him, Greg, that's cool. How's it doing that? And I walk into the whole thing, and then Greg, it turned into an hour and a half conversation about Nuro and how you're doing this, and it's really amazing what you're doing in Nuro. So I had this wonderful conversation with my father-in-law from watching your videos. I love to know, what is the reaction from the residents of Houston when they see the R2 go by and delivers a pizza for them? Is it like, wow, this is cool? What's that like?
With Domino's, we launched the first fully autonomous delivery service with the zero-occupant AV. And so we're delivering pizzas with R2. Folks might have seen, as I'm sure sounds like you showed your father-in-law, the Domino's ads that ran this summer. Domino's brought back the Noid. That was the villain that they used in the 80s for anything that stops you from getting your hot pizza delivered in time. With this partnership, we brought R2 out to deliver to real customers while avoiding the Noid, as the commercials say. There's just so much excitement seeing R2 on the roads, and we've been thrilled with the reception of R2s in the community. I will note we do have two different types of vehicles in our fleet. We have retrofitted Priuses, which we used to map and for initial testing. And then we have the R2. And the R2 is the showstopper, for the kids, obviously. The kids love R2. People want to tip R2. People say hello and goodbye to the robot. They wave to it. So this all just goes to show that R2 was designed to be a friendly introduction to autonomous vehicles and to give people sort of a friendly entry point. So ultimately, R2 is inspiring excitement, imagination. It's been really awesome to see, and the community has been really excited to welcome us. We're learning from our customers along the way. Customers are thrilled with R2, and we're using all of these learnings to build our next generation vehicle. We're learning from Domino's as well. We're learning together, because both Nuro and Domino's care a lot about what happens when the pizza leaves the store to go to the customer. We also care about what happens beforehand. Together, we built this whole new front-end experience and in-store experience. And we really thought about what every single facet of that autonomous delivery experience should be. And we've been working on bringing that to life. And so ultimately, it's not just a new experience for the customer either. It's a new experience for the store staff, bringing out the pizza to interact with the bot, opening the bot doors, watching when it's being dispatched, putting the pizza in. And so we've been working with Domino's to do new kinds of integrations with their systems and working with their staff on new kinds of work. And So it's been a great learning experience.
Is it fully integrated? So if you're a resident in Houston and you're in R2 territory, you order your Domino's pizza and do you select R2, or does it automatically come? How does that work?
Yeah. So if you're living in the zip codes for which we're delivering with R2, customers would go to Domino's website and they would put in their order. And if they're in the delivery zone, they would have the option of choosing an R2 delivery or human delivery. So if you choose R2 delivery, it shows you the little bot. It says arrive in an autonomous vehicle. And then as the R2 is on the way, you get a notification, and you'll actually get a PIN code before the vehicle arrives. And you type in that PIN code in order for the doors to open and for you to get your pizza.
Okay, so I have to be me here. I go to Houston, I check into a hotel, I order a Domino's pizza. Will you deliver to the hotel just so I can experience this?
If you're in the service area.
Okay. All right, I'm going to fly down to Houston and check this out so I can wave to the R2. You have this great partnership with Domino's. Domino's is an incredible American comeback story. The business is operating and firing all cylinders. And then you've got this great company Fred Smith started out of Memphis, Tennessee called FedEx. Nuro has a partnership with FedEx, but I want to point out the most important caveat in the press release. This was on FedEx.com. This wasn't on a blog. It said, quote unquote, this is a multi-year, multi-phase agreement. I want to repeat, multi-year, multi-phase agreement. When you see a lot of the partnerships today in autonomy, there's some that do really well. Too Simple has multi-year partnerships, but Locomation has multi-year partnerships. But most of these, they're small. They're 3-month trial, 6-month trial. Not Nuro. You're going to commercialization. How did you pull off a multi-year, multi-phase deal?
We have a goods-only focus, and that's a benefit. We're laser-focused on delivery. The companies we're partnering with are laser-focused on delivery as part of their business model. And so since delivery is our business, as it is with our partners, we don't look at delivery as an alternative go-to market plan. We don't look at it as something we dabble in. And so our partners know that our interests are unequivocally aligned with theirs. And that's a huge differentiator. And so, we don't need to consider whether there's a certain feature or benefit and whether that would compete with the needs that a passenger might have in our AVs because, well, we don't carry people. We're designing our vehicles to carry goods. And so, I think that might seem like a really obvious point, but it really goes to how we think through building our business of autonomy. Even the height of our robots compartment is designed with the thinking about the ergonomics of loading and unloading goods. And so what that means is we can credibly look our partners in the eye and say, we are generally focused on building the best possible delivery solution and experience in the world. I think that's what we're doing differently. We're not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole or a round peg in a square hole. We're focused on building something that will meet the needs of our partners. And so that creates, really, I think, a strategic alignment that's part of our DNA that you can't reverse engineer if you're just doing it contractually. The big thing here is that with any of our partners, whether it's Domino's and whether it's FedEx, whenever they're able to do more deliveries, we benefit. And so we don't have to trade off initiative A or initiative B. We're focused on goods delivery and doing that as well as we can. And so that's how we have partnerships with America's #1 pizza company, America's #1 retailer, America's #1 groceries chain, and more. And I'll share actually a little testimonial that an anonymous partner told our team. One of our partners actually described us as the most impressive company they'd never heard of. And then they described us as being nimble and scalable and having a deep understanding of their business and how to properly integrate Nuro and the service we're building within that. And so back to FedEx. Nuro and FedEx, we have a shared vision on what the future of delivery looks like. We have a commitment to communities, which we share with FedEx. That includes working with the hardworking delivery drivers who bring people packages every day. Our technology can ultimately, we think, help to improve the daily experience of FedEx's team members by taking on inefficient deliveries, finding new ways to move parcels, and adding new capacity to support, rapidly growing demand as e-commerce continues to grow. And so that's all within the focus of improving the convenience and the experience for FedEx's customers and delivering at the most convenient times for them as well.
Nuro's going to complement the traditional FedEx drivers and delivery services. You're right about e-commerce. We're seeing this in the Port of LA, the Port of Long Beach. Everything in practically in my house is bought online. You need this, you go online. I don't go to a store anymore. Everything's delivered. And it's not just me and my family. Everybody wants it today. They don't want to wait. And as you scale up Nuro and you build this incredible factory in Nevada, you'll be able to meet the demand. So if somebody's going to order something from a FedEx, okay, it can be at your house in an hour or two. If you want to say this, you could say that you're entering the perfect store in the perfect timing because as Nuro scales, Nuro will help shore up the supply chain because a big chunk of the supply chain is consumer spending, and Nuro will be able to deliver consumer goods. I got to know this, that all these reports came out during the depths of the pandemic, and they came out a couple weeks ago. Costco's rationing toilet paper. They sell in big bulks. Could a toilet paper like Costco size fit in one of your compartments?
So I haven't been to Costco recently, but I'm certain that it could.
Oh, good. So when I run out of toilet paper, I'm going to get my Nuro app out in the future, and I'm going to have you deliver it. And so I'm never going to run out.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say on that too, Grayson. When we look at delivery and we look at how it manifests in the world today, they're basically sort of two sides of this graph, right? You can get things quickly and you can get them expensively through some sort of app. You can get something delivered, or you can get it delivered a little bit slower and cheaply by having it shipped from somewhere farther away. And so what we're doing is we're trying to break the back of that cost curve by providing you with a fast and affordable and reliable delivery service that's also electric and it's going to drive safer, right? And so when you look at that, there are studies that have shown also that getting things delivered from local retail stores is one of the most sustainable ways to shop too. And so if you're able to also help local commerce compete, local retail stores compete in the digital economy, that's a win for Main Street. That's a win for the environment. That's a win for safety. And that's a win for your local economy too. As we look towards what we want the future of commerce to look like, we see just a tremendous opportunity for autonomous delivery to unlock a whole lot of opportunities for communities. Opportunities for communities should be, I guess, my new catchphrase or something. But we see such a huge opportunity here, and that's really what we're chasing.
Break the back of the cost curve. Break the back of the cost curve. When you look at your local retailers, a mom and pop, or perhaps it's a local ice cream store or a local stationery store, they cannot afford the fees that unnamed delivery services charge them because their margins are 3-4%. They lose money on that. And you're coming here and saying, we've got a viable alternative that will allow you to continue to operate your business. And oh, by the way, we're not going to eat into your margins.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's what we're going for. It's how can we help to level that playing field in order for local commerce to compete. And one interesting stat too, Grayson, is that before the pandemic, 90% of retail activity in the U.S. was local retail. 10% was e-commerce. E-commerce grabs headlines all the time, but still local commerce, even during the pandemic, local commerce still accounted for about 86% of retail activity. If you do the math, then you put e-commerce on 14%. Finding ways to help local retail adapt is also going to be crucial. I think moving forward, there's always going to be an important role there to play. And we want to figure out we want to help to serve those needs.
Local retail, local commerce is built around one thing: community. You go in there and you know the individual, and you have a relationship with them. If something you need, they'll go find it for you. So it's all built on relationships. You're looking at different areas around the United States, and Nuro's decided to plant the Nuro flag in Houston. You've got the FedEx partnership operating in Houston, got the Domino's partnership operating in Houston. Why was Houston chosen as the preferred city, the launch city, the test city, whatever term you want to use for it? Why Houston?
Well, it's not just the barbecue. It turns out Houston's actually the fourth largest city in the U.S., so it's a huge market. It's also the most diverse city in America, and that's in terms of population demographics. And then it also has just this tremendously diverse set of roadway environments. So that lets our software team learn. And then it also lets our team that's focused on our customers learn from our customers. Not to mention, there's just a fantastic talent pool out there and an emerging tech ecosystem and what we call the Silicon Bayou. The other side of the coin is there's a lot of traffic in Houston. The average commute in Houston is about 60 minutes round trip, which means there's a lot of people who just don't want to drive more than they have to. As we grow our service, providing people with a friendlier alternative to driving their vehicle to and from the store. An interesting stat here is that pre-pandemic at least, 43% of household trips in personal vehicles were for shopping and errands. Only 24% was for commuting. And so we spent a lot of time in transportation policy and this whole sector talking about commuting and moving people, but going to get things and running errands is just such a tremendous amount. It accounts for a big amount of the trips that we do. And so that's where we see a big opportunity to help to serve that community.
Houston, it's a diverse city, and I want to point a really cool, interesting, random trivia fact out of there. When Isidore Sharp, the founder of Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, opened the Four Seasons in Houston, he was so proud of the accomplishment, Pavarotti actually showed up at the hotel and played in the ballroom. To announce that the only time Pavarotti played in a Four Seasons ballroom was in Houston. And then you had Clyde the Glide, Hakeem Olajuwon, those great Rockets teams of the 90s. So great sports town. Yeah, the random Pavarotti fact there. You're going into Houston. You're having a positive impact. And I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine here, because in the July 2020 Medium post about Joey Nuro, you stated the following. I believe that a person's ability to access fresh groceries, prescriptions, and other essentials shouldn't be contingent on owning a car. That's why I'm thrilled to be joining the policy team at Nuro. I'm happy you joined Nuro. Frankly, as a friend, I'm very proud of you. And I want you to expand on this, because this statement, this wasn't you working with PR and a fluff statement. It's deeply personal to you. As you grew up in the Central Valley of California, you experienced and saw things that made this personal to you. Talk about it, please.
Thank you, Grayson. I grew up in the Central Valley of California, and for those who are unfamiliar, when folks think of California, they think of more glamorous neighbors. That's the north and the south. They think of San Francisco, they think of LA, they think of San Diego. What's forgotten are the dusty farm towns in between, as Merle Haggard was saying, Tulare dust. And although it's forgotten, the Central Valley produces just a tremendous amount of the agricultural products in the U.S. My roots are in agriculture. My grandma was a line worker at an olive canning facility. My grandpa was an orange farmer. My dad works in a cheese plant, actually works in a cheese plant that makes cheese for Domino's. He makes the cheese and we deliver the pizzas. It's an incredibly fertile and productive land, but it's also ground zero for food insecurity. The breadbasket of the world is actually where a lot of people struggle with hunger. The poverty rate in Tulare County is 22%, which is twice the national average. And a lot of families struggle to put food on the tables. And these are agricultural workers. These are farm workers who are picking our food and are working in 110-degree heat, but who go home and have a lot of trouble just getting to a supermarket. A study found that 45% of farm workers in Fresno, which is one of the nearest larger towns near us, 45% of farm workers struggle with food insecurity due to lack of public transportation and a lack of grocery stores nearby. The big challenge that is often faced here is transportation. When I was in high school, I was often helping some of my friends run errands, getting groceries for their families and things like that, because if you're growing up in this area and you have a lower income family, a car is just a tremendous, tremendous cost. A lot of farm workers actually take van pools and ride share, not traditional ride share. You ride with a friend who has a car to work. And so, we could spend a lot of time talking about transportation in the Central Valley, but I think that really the place where my concern about transportation and food insecurity and just the lack of access to opportunity comes from growing up and seeing that challenge with hunger, with accessing good food firsthand, and just seeing that just the bitter, cruel irony of farm workers struggling to eat. That's where it comes from.
Yummy tummies are important. Nutrition's important. I want to point for you said Fresno. I got to give a shout out to Aaron Judge, the New York Yankees. He's from Fresno. You've got the great country music in Bakersfield there. So there's a lot of really great cultural elements and individuals that have come there, and you've grew up there. You've got this experience growing up there, and then you moved. You say, I want to go into politics. So where do we go? We go to the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And while you're there, you drove for Uber and Lyft, and you saw the harsh realities once again firsthand when you were driving the car. Was it those two monumental impacts that you saw both growing up and then moving to D.C. were like, wait a second, something has to change?
That's exactly right. When I started driving for Uber and Lyft, It was because I'd quit a job in political consulting. I'd had a pretty cushy, comfortable job, and a friend got me excited about autonomous vehicles, and I quit that job. I started driving for Uber and Lyft and blogging about transportation. And I drove basically quote unquote full time for the TNCs. A lot of my rides were taking people to the airport or to lunch, things like that. But there was another segment of rides that I noticed were in Southeast DC. This is an area that doesn't have a lot of great public transportation options, and it's been really impacted. It's by decades of urban disinvestment, redlining, discriminatory practices, and a disinvestment also in just fundamental infrastructure. And that's not just roadways, that's supermarkets. A lot of Southeast DC it's categorized as food deserts. And so a lot of my passengers would request these rides from me. It would take me 15 minutes to get to them. And they would call me. They'd say, hey, please don't cancel. And I'd be like, I'm coming. Absolutely. When I arrived, I found out they were going to the grocery store. They told me that they would, this happened on numerous occasions. They told me that they called me and asked me not to cancel because so often drivers were canceling on them because they didn't want to go out to these areas. They didn't want to pick them up. That's heartbreaking in the first place, just on its face. But on the second part is they were trying to access food. They're trying to get to the grocery store. I would drive them to the grocery store and I'd say, could you please wait in the parking lot because it's going to take another 20, 30 minutes to get a ride. And I'm going to be standing outside with my groceries in the heat or in the cold. And I would end up staying. And what was really incredible, Grayson, is just these families had to pay $15 to $25, $30 to get a ride to and from the grocery store. They were paying for a ride they couldn't afford to get groceries that were also difficult to access. Just the stories I heard were just heartbreaking. What this showed me is that hunger and nutritional challenges that come from transportation, it isn't just a rural issue. It isn't an urban issue. It isn't a suburban. It's an issue that we face in every part of our communities. We did analysis right after I joined Nuro. We published this. We found that 20 million low-income Americans live in food deserts and face significant challenges in accessing fresh food. Disproportionately, people of color are more likely to live in food deserts, even controlling for income. And when you have limited access to fresh groceries and fresh vegetables and those options, you see higher rates of heart disease, obesity, and lots of other issues. With delivery AVs, bringing this back to autonomy, the opportunity that we see with delivery AVs is our analysis found that we could help to serve up to 14 million or 70% of those Americans with low incomes who currently live in food deserts. We can provide them with access to fresh groceries, and that's something we're really focused on. As we've been looking at scaling our service, our founders committed to deliberately including communities of color in our service plans. And so when you think about this from the business aspect, when you just draw a radius around a grocery store, you're probably not going to be serving those communities that were left behind in the first place. And so now we're looking at ways, how can we ensure that we're serving those communities that were left behind as we grow this service? How can we do that? How can we make that happen? And that's something that we've been really, really focused on. COVID-19 has obviously exacerbated a lot of inequalities. And one of the things that we started last year was we partnered with Houston Food Bank, partnered with Second Harvest, and we partnered with Waste Not to do deliveries with food banks in Texas, California, and Arizona to help to make thousands of deliveries of food to hungry families during this time as well. We're committed to making sure that we're building out the service and we're giving back to the communities as we grow.
You're doing good. You, on a personal level, what you did in DC, you changed that person's life. You changed their evening. They were able to have a hot meal, a healthy meal, because you were willing to sacrifice for the betterment of society. I commend you. That's a very unselfish thing to do, and we need more unselfish people in this world, Greg. You got to be proud about that. Very few people would do that, and we saw that firsthand when you were getting these phone calls. Please don't cancel. And you could tell in the tone of the voice, like, this is serious. This isn't, hi, I want to go to a nightclub and get drunk. No, it's like, hi, I want to get something healthy to eat.
Yeah. I was doing my job at the time, but the thing was that it was really sad to hear that people were canceling rides on these folks who were just trying to get life essentials. This shouldn't be hard. It shows that something is broken in our society or in the way that we're doing things, the fact that this was how it had to happen.
But you did the right thing. Nuro's doing the right thing. You're reaching out to African American communities, and I'll give you a little bit of unsolicited advice here. I have a tremendous amount of friends in the community. Please do church outreach and church engagement in those communities. It's a critical part of their life, and they build trust, and there's some incredible individuals involved with that, and that's the best way to build trust with that community. When you're delivering all of the healthy food, the yummy tummy food and fresh groceries, what role does packaging play? And is the vehicle design where in Houston it gets very hot, where if somebody ordered ice cream, the ice cream's not going to melt, or they ordered, say, a pre-cooked chicken, the temperature's going to be okay. What role is packaging going to play in all this?
That's a great question. So let's actually start where things are today, right? There's a funny statistic that I saw, which is that 28% of delivery drivers admit to having taken a bite of the food that they're delivering.
That's not good.
28%. Yeah, so that's one thing that you don't have to worry about with R2. But packaging can be important because we want it to be really easy to also unload your packages and have that magical experience. And that's especially important for folks who are in wheelchairs. We've worked with our partners to provide bags with handles, actually, to make it easier to unload when it arrives. But another thing, with a custom vehicle too, it's designed for just carrying goods. We've actually developed heated and cooled compartments capabilities so that not only can your pizza arrive hot, but your beer or your soda can arrive cold, or your groceries can be safely transported at an appropriate temperature. And also, we talked a little about the unloading experience before, but I think it's also important to think about the height of those compartments to make that easier for folks to access. We're looking at kind of the whole experience. How do we transport things in a way that basically works better than transporting your pizza in a passenger seat and constantly moving around with each turn? That's really how we're thinking about this.
Heated and cooled departments. I want to repeat that. Heated and cooled departments. Once again, Nuro's thinking things through. You're not taking shortcuts. You popped into my brain and said, oh, wait a second, I know some random guy that would ask about that. And sure enough, I asked about it, and you got it built because you haven't publicized it enough. So I recommend another piece of unsolicited advice. Publicize it more, because my ice cream will arrive cold. My pizza would arrive hot. Putting this all together, how do you envision the overall food delivery market maturing and scaling?
Right now, delivery today is just way too expensive for a lot of people. Only 7% of people in one survey said they're willing to pay the current prices for delivery, but more than 80% would pay if it was only $1 to $2. That's especially true for people who already have, limited access, whether you're living in a food desert or if you're a person with disabilities. And so AVs can make this service, we think, affordable for all. That's how we really see this food delivery market scaling. And not to mention, we can build a service that helps people to shift towards an alternative that's safer and more sustainable. And the pandemic has also been an accelerant. It really increased the demand for delivery. I saw this stat as well, over 18 months from August 2019 until this spring, online grocery stores quadrupled. And Instacart went from 150,000 to 750,000 shoppers in just 1 year. This is a change that we think is going to persist and grow as it moves forward. And contactless delivery really had its moment, of course. And I think that's going to continue to be the case.
You spoke about the lower end of the market, but the higher end of the market, we don't like fees. We don't want to pay these exorbitant fees. It's cheaper to get in the vehicle and drive to the store to buy it and factoring in the gas. So if you can lower the fees, you've got a tremendous business that's going to scale for the individuals that need it and for the individuals that don't like the fees. So you're spot on that, because mark my words, at some point in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to have a war on fees, and they're going to be forced to lower because consumers are going to say, well, we're not going to pay them anymore. So that's really going to change. You're delivering packages for FedEx, you're delivering pizzas for Domino's, you're delivering groceries in partnership with Kroger, which raises the big question, will you eventually have different vehicle types? One for like the FedEx packages of the world, the one for the pizzas, the groceries, and perhaps you have another one that delivers fresh vegetables.
Our vehicles are designed to be really customizable within the compartments. Of course, we can, as we discussed, we can keep your Pizza Hut. We can keep your groceries cool. We can also design those compartments to carry multiple people's packages securely. So you can think about all the ways you can customize those compartments to where basically the way that we're using a vehicle might not look like vehicles that you've seen on the road before. As we continue to build our service too, the benefit of building vehicles from the ground up is as we continue to deepen these partnerships with all these companies across different verticals, we can build vehicles that meet their needs. And we can leverage the compartments we have, the customizable versions we have to meet those needs moving forward. Stay tuned for news about our next generation vehicle.
I hope I get a sneak peek, please. Zooming out, and let's looking at the broader mobility market for a second. You've got this great experience from the Eno Center. You were at SAFE. You were Mr. Mobility. I'll never forget it. I got you to have a breakfast in DC when I was visiting, and we had this great conversation about the future of mobility. So zooming out, you've got a sharp mind on policy, but you also have a sharp mind on mobility. In your opinion, what does the future of mobility look like?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate it, Grayson, that you were able to get my former reporter self, scraggly guy who was very sleepy, to drag himself to a downtown breakfast pretty early in the morning, if I remember right. But really great conversation. I think I forgave you by the end of it, or at least
you said you would have breakfast again with me.
Yeah. The future mobility TM, I put a TM at the end of that a lot of the time. I have this Twitter thread where I catalog all the crazy ideas about the future mobility that pop up. It's kind of satire. This can be anything. There's all kinds of crazy contraptions that people share and talk about as being the future mobility. And usually this is about technology or maybe some harebrained innovation, quote unquote. But I think if we want to seriously think about the future mobility, I think we need to think about not just the technology, but the outcomes we want. More mobility is a good thing. Giving people safer, sustainable, convenient options, that's the good thing. That's what we want to work towards. That's the future that we want. And so if we find ways to build a future mobility that allows people to experience more of life, to have more convenient access to personal mobility and to goods, that's a good future mobility. Safe, sustainable, equitable, accessible. For me, the future mobility is not about technology. It's about better outcomes. It's about providing people with choice and with freedom. And that means the choice between great transportation options, right? That can be quality public transportation. That's joyful rides on a bicycle or on micro-mobility device of whatever sort, whether it's an autonomous pogo stick or whether it's an e-bike. Safe rides in autonomous vehicles, not to mention reliable and affordable and fast, zero emissions, autonomous delivery. The future mobility should improve upon what we have today. That's what I think is important to keep in mind, is that the future mobility isn't about building towards some techno-utopian dream. It's about finding ways to improve people's lives. It's about helping to address the multitude of problems we face today in transportation. We lose 40,000 lives every year on our roads. Transportation is the number one contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. We have 20 million low-income Americans living in food deserts. The better future mobility is about all working together, from urbanists to environmentalists to industry to city leaders to consumers, to build that. When I think about a good future mobility, I think of being able to bike, bus, ride an AV, or walk to work.
You said something that's important that's not said enough. More mobility is a good thing. More mobility is a good thing. There are certain factions, for whatever political interest or reasons, they want to ban mobility and limit mobility. But no, mobility will give individuals freedom. It will give them the ability to go to better jobs, to go to better schools, to do more and have a better positive impact on society. So thank you for saying more mobility is a good thing, because it is a good thing. Greg, putting this entire conversation in context, we covered a lot of ground. What is the future of Nuro?
Our mission at Nuro is to better everyday life through robotics. We've been making the investments in our facilities, in our workers, in our communities to make that happen, Grayson. And the future of Nuro is the future of local commerce. It's the future of connecting people to essentials. It's helping people access the things they need affordably, sustainably, and safely, regardless of whether they own a car or not.
That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And Greg, as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them?
Two things. The first, Autonomous delivery is going to bring a lot of benefits to society. It's going to make our streets safer. It's going to improve access to fresh groceries and food deserts. It'll reduce emissions in our cities. But the second thing is that I really encourage folks to think of AVs not just as cars that are going to drive themselves, but think about the new vehicle designs that are going to define the future of transportation, the future of mobility, throw TM on the end of it. And I think that new vehicle designs are going to define the future of transportation just as much as software is, if not more. Autonomy allows us to reimagine how vehicles are designed and how they're used. And I think that we really need to seize on that opportunity, whether it's me and you talking on a podcast, Grayson, or policymakers in Capitol Hill, or in state capitals, or in city halls, or stakeholders. I think we all need to work together to seize on that opportunity to make transportation safer, more equitable, and more efficient.
New design will transform mobility. And Greg, thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy today, because the future is bright, the future is autonomous, and the future is Nuro. Greg, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Grayson. Yeah, it's really great to join you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter at Road to Autonomy or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.